Yeah, because right now there's Angry Chicken on your channel.
I'm seeing us.
Oh, is that the Jocelyn you guys were talking about?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Um, there's the share.
Did I ever put a carrot? I did not put a carrot. Do you have a carrot?
Oh, crap. I had one. I was thinking about a few days ago. I should have jumped in and put it on.
Oh, are we live right now?
Yep.
Oh, well, then I'm not going to say anything. Well, no, I didn't know if you had heard about, I didn't know if you follow Amanda Palmer on Twitter.
Yes, but I don't check Twitter often, but I am a patron, so I have gotten very long explanations as they are. It's another thing that was hitting me over the head yesterday when I was already depressed.
Yeah, I didn't. I only saw the one that she put public. I didn't go in any detail or anything. I'm just like, okay, that's. I'm like,
Really
I don't.
heartbreaking.
I don't know what happened. I don't.
There's
I
not
don't
really
think.
details, but he moved to the UK.
Yeah, I know he moved back to London, and I'm just like, oh, that's all I needed in my life. Oh, really? Really? You're gonna do that? Come on, come on. There you go. Don't look, iPad. I don't need you to start breaking on me too. All right. All right. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready.
All right. I didn't tweet.
I tweeted on LimeWire as well as the official and mine. So
Okay, well, Grills is attached to mine. I'm not gonna. Fuck it, I may as well. My show too. Although I
it is your
posted the wrong one, but I posted last week's shit. Sure.
It's okay.
Ooh, I gotta change my profile information. It says I'm still GM of like Pone Cakes.
Oh, you have not been on Twitter for a while, have you?
Yeah, I was actually an early adopter of Twitter, but I just don't use it much.
I
use it when I'm like working, you know.
I was an early adopter, then I got off of it, and then I got back on, and I'm like, okay, and like maybe I shouldn't have gotten back on. But yeah, anyway, because it's a cesspool. So, but yeah, the internet's a cesspool. So, all right, whenever you're ready.
Oh, I didn't share it at Diamond Club. Hold on, I definitely should do that because that's where you know.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck. Oh, never mind. Let's just go.
Okay. Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow. Also, give us a review. That helps others find us. And as always, to help me today, Ember.
Hello there, I am September, and you can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12, and hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Heresy and Hearsay is a Patreon site that you can find at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay. Please visit there today to help support us. Just $2 a month goes a long way to help us make this humble show. You can also contribute with bits in Twitch or subscribe for free if you have Amazon Prime.
So today we're going to be talking about reopening the states shows. We're going to be talking about reopening the states, and we're also going to be talking about what happens if we have to go back into lockdown, and what that could possibly mean for the election. We're less than 6 months out at this point, and so actually, I think we're right at 6 months. I think. And so we should have that discussion. And I think it's an important discussion to have. And luckily, I have the most brilliant individual when it comes to political wonkery, and that would be September. So,
Well, not all of that, and I'm a little out of touch right now, but I try to keep up.
but so a lot of states started reopening back on May 1st. And so, especially a lot of southern states, I know that number has increased since then. I know this past weekend that, like, for example, the parks in New York opened up and they were supposed to keep social distancing. And then the pictures from the parks in New York was everybody was just all huddled together. And I'm just going,
yeah.
I understand. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I'm tired of only leaving my house once every 2 weeks, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to go grocery shopping, do laundry, things like that. I get it. I would like to have more contact with people I know. I would love to go and visit September when she's cooking food, because she made pizza tonight, and I'm like, really? All right, I'll make another peanut butter
scratch too, man.
I'll make another peanut butter sandwich. Not saying I can't cook. There is a significant difference when you're trying to cook for yourself versus if you cook for a larger group of people. And most recipes, you can find them, but it doesn't translate well. Individual cooking versus normal recipes. Like, you can't make a casserole for one. It just doesn't work out that way.
Well, you can. But
you can't.
Yes, you can. They even make little casserole dishes.
They do.
Casseroles are something that are actually usually better the next day. So you make a casserole and then you divide it into individual portions and you refrigerate or freeze it.
I know, but after the fourth day, you're just like, really?
Well, if you've got a freezer, you can keep it for weeks, years. Anyway, that would take foresight and planning.
Are you saying that Reverend Barney, doesn't do foresight and planning? Is that what you're saying?
I think you don't care enough about it to be able to cook for one properly.
Probably not. No, I'm just well, it's like, you know, I grew up cooking for family, so that's, and I'm a cook, not a chef, and definitely not a baker, meaning that everything is just like let's see what's in the kitchen today. Okay, and I'm going to throw all this together, and there we go. And
I do understand, because like there are a lot of things. Two of my husband and one of my sons are very picky, and another one moved out of the house, and so there's like Victor and I are the only ones that'll eat most things. So there are things that like I'm not going to bother cooking, that I have mostly given up or make very, very occasionally, because making it just for myself. But for me, it's a little different, because it's just that it's adding work when I'm already cooking for everyone else.
Right.
But I made that pie, and Victor is the only one in the house who's even interested in it. And so, yeah, I've been eating way too much strawberry rhubarb pie.
But as you said, it's great for breakfast. So
it is a wonderful breakfast. But that's it relates to the closings. Because with things that everyone in my house won't eat, and things that I shouldn't overindulge in, right. What I have been doing for years is have some, pack it up, take it to the brewery, share the rest. And I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's like I went to the store today. It's like, you know what? I'm going to stop and I'm going to get me some tacos at Hardee's. Some Hardee's, which is a fast food place in this area, maybe Carl Jr. and other areas. Some of them have a red burrito attached, which is basically a cheap knockoff taco place that they have attached to their stuff. And I wanted some tacos, so I went rolled up and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna get 5 tacos for $4.99. That's not a bad deal. That's $1 a taco. And they're like, "Oh, we're out of beef." I was like, "Well, okay, I guess I'll take chicken." You know, and it's like,
Huh.
and, and I'm like, "Wow." I don't know if they're having only chicken sandwiches or stuff because Hardee's is kind of like the you think of as the beef place because they had the thick burger and stuff like that, and you're going. And I started thinking of like, are they completely out of beef? Because that wouldn't be good. Because I know they were talking about there was going to be a shortage of beef. I didn't go down the meat aisle because I
I
didn't
saw
need any.
plenty. Was it just beef tacos?
I didn't ask for anything else, so I don't know.
Okay.
It may have been just beef tacos, which I'm pretty sure comes in a pre-made container that they just put
Probably.
in a thing. And look,
I think they're probably having a lot of difficulty estimating their business, being able to only do takeout and drive-through. So a lot of restaurants are making adjustments to their ordering.
right.
As far as I've been seeing, the supply chain interruptions and trouble has not so much been with the restaurants, it's been our system being weirdly set up so people can't get stuff and people are trying to get more because restaurants are using less. But like I don't, I think I told you, I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show, but at least one of our local restaurants, they're selling groceries too. I can get shrimp and beef and toilet paper and eggs and bacon and stuff because their supply chain is uninterrupted, but they're selling less than normal. So I
Right.
can get it, drive up and walk and drive away. Can't find the toilet paper in the store, but I can get it at the restaurant.
I've been getting my toilet paper at my local convenience store. They sell little rolls of toilet paper and stuff like that. The Scott's stuff, which is what I use anyway. So it's like, that's fine. But yeah, I've been to since this started, every food line I have been to has been completely wiped out. Now, I've been told that other stores have toilet paper. It's just Food Lion, for whatever reason, can't get toilet paper. So I don't know if it's a supply chain issue with them, per se, because they're a smaller chain store or whatever. I don't know. But I don't go to Walmart. I try to avoid Walmart as much as possible and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but so places are reopening or states are reopening. North Carolina is going to start reopening in phases starting on Friday. The link that I put in our show notes towards the bottom has a link, has like cases throughout, the entire time. And you would think for us to reopen that the arc of cases would start to drop. That is not the case. It's slowly been climbing every, the cases have been going up every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did see some good numbers today in North Carolina, actually, now that they have done, actually ramped up some testing. We're still one of the worst places for testing in the country. But they did like 12,000 tests yesterday, I think it was, yesterday. And 502 more cases were reported due to that. But if you take the percentage of the positive tests before and the percentage of tests and compare it to how many tests were being done, the
Right.
actual percentage of cases is down.
Right. And I'm hoping that's the case. I'm just worried that we're going to do this too fast and we're going to get another outbreak.
I definitely have that concern. Friday, there's a lot of things opening back up. At 50% capacity, bars and restaurants still can't here. Salons and gyms can't. That'll be another 2 weeks, I think it is.
Right.
They are allowing gatherings of less than 10 people as
Right.
long as they're outside. I
Right.
actually got a message yesterday. I gotta say I'm flattered because it was a friend of mine who's like, hey, starting Friday, if you're comfortable with it, you can gather with 10 people or less as long as it's outside, and bonfire. Because we really do enjoy hosting bonfires.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to rain Friday, and then Saturday's supposed to be really cold, so I don't know. And I'm not sure. I am pretty comfortable with, like, outside, 10 people. We could definitely sit 6 feet apart, and I would, feel pretty good about that. I have sanitizer. I can control, if people go in the house to use the bathroom or whatever.
Right.
And that might be okay. But I don't know if I'm going to go ahead or not. I mean, I'm nervous as hell. My husband is, like, insisting on seeing his girlfriend tonight. And he just drove her to the store. I'm like, that's not 6 feet apart in the car. God. But we have precautions. There's a robe at the door, and he's going to strip down, and he's going to put his shit in the washer, and he's going to go take a shower. I mean, we treat it like as if he were a nurse or something, right? There's, like, sanitizer. He has to sanitize the bathroom after he showers and wash everything.
It's like he's first. He's basically getting sprayed with a hose as soon as he walks in the door. Like, I don't know where you've been.
I'm tempted to make it continue that after this, but that's another conversation.
I'm like, yeah.
But,
as soon as he walks in, he gets sprayed with Lysol. It's like,
oh, I just don't go anywhere near him until he changes and washes everything. So
no, I understand.
I have to protect myself.
No, I get you. I understand. You have to protect you, and you have to protect your kids. And
I mean, I don't do that. I'm not being a hypocrite. I don't go to that extent when I go to the store. Right. I'm still being the red shirt and doing all the runs for groceries. But I do wear my mask. I wash my hands. I sanitize the groceries, like, in the car, the surfaces, before they're brought in the house. But I'm also distancing appropriately and not, talking to people for hours. So.
Right. No, I completely understand that. I completely get that. And I appreciate, like, when I go to the grocery store, that you go this way. They have one-way aisles now.
Some stores. Some don't, some do. And I screwed that up last week. I didn't look. They had added it to a store I hadn't been in a while. And I was going the wrong way. And I felt so terrible. And you know what? It was the same store where I got all that grief. I don't know if you saw that post.
I did.
And Rob's been in that same store, and he's not getting any of that. And it took me a few days. All right, for those of you who don't follow me on Facebook, but go ahead if you want. September McCready. I went to the store, and this store, and I hate to categorize people, but it is in I live in a sort of rural area, and this store goes toward even more rural. I'll just leave it there. I see a lot more Confederate flags out that way.
Do you hear banjos?
I don't know. If I was going to film an American version of Trailer Park Boys, I would do it. There's a place between here and that store. Anyway, too many Fox News viewers or something. So I went to the store, and I was wearing my mask, as I do, and got my groceries. And I don't always notice the people around me, but I guess I have to now because I'm keeping distance, right?
Right.
And you want to see which way people are going so that you can step aside or whatever. And I'm waiting like 6-7 feet away from somebody who's looking at something that I'm going to get. And, this guy walks past me really close, and he just shakes his head. And I'm like, what the hell was that? Right? Like I'm being stupid. And it happened a couple more times where these big old hat wearing white dudes and people just looking at me and shaking their heads, and and then I checked out, and the guy in front of me was, he's checking out and everything, and then the cashier, she said, okay, sir, when you go, please exit to the right. And he just walks out the left-hand door, and she said, he doesn't know his right and left. I said, well, if he were facing you, that's sort of still right. And we had a laugh over it. And she was really nice, and she's like, I like your mask, it's really cool, and whatever. And I checked out and went on my way. And then I was leaving the store, and I had to walk to the other end of the store to go out the right-hand door, but there are exit doors and enter doors only, and it's been that way for like a couple of weeks here.
Right.
I usually park down at that end because I know that. And a guy pulls up in his truck, and he almost hits me. Like he's coming across, and I'm a pedestrian. I'm waiting, and I figure he's going to stop, but he doesn't. So I just stop short, and he zips in front of me, and he outright shook his head laughing. And I was just so enraged and upset by this. I'm like, I can't go there. I can't. And I posted about it, and I was like, the next time some asshole laughs at me or points at me or shakes their head at me because I'm wearing a mask, which theoretically is mostly to protect them, but acting like I'm stupid, I'm going to just run over coughing all the way and lick them. And so it was a very interesting discussion on my Facebook page. People are like, oh my God, what the hell? And a few days later, and I don't know if you saw this, if you're friends with my friend Neil. But he was saying that he wears masks everywhere, every time he gets out of his car, anywhere. And he's never had anyone say a word, but his female friends keep getting hassled. And he's like, why is that? Men are assholes. And I said, wow. And there were a few other accounts of female friends of his who had this kind of grief in a few situations. Most people haven't had too much of a problem at all, but it did seem like, yeah. And I didn't even really notice until he mentioned it. I was like, oh, wow. Actually, come to think of it, it was all men. And Rob has said, like I said, Rob has been to the same store and not had any look askance even. And that makes me very sad, and I wonder if that is, like, I didn't even notice it at the time, but like a sexist, like, if Rob were with me, would they have been so bold?
I don't know. I can say that I go to the store and you made me this Wonder Woman mask and I wear it. And nobody says a word to me. Of course, I'm also a giant. So.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to, like, snicker at you to your face, man.
Like, they may have went, you should have saw that guy is like, at the store, he was wearing a Wonder Woman mask. He's like, did you say anything to him? It was like, no, because he's 6'5" giant. He probably just pounded me. Like,
let the Wonky win.
He would have ripped my arms off. It's like, no, I wouldn't, because that would have put like blood on me, and that's the exchange of bodily fluids, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. Like, I even put my mask on when I go into drive-thrus, just for respect purposes and everything else. But I didn't even do that originally. But I since I've gotten the mask and everything, I didn't do it the first time I went out, but since then I've done it every time. And I had a friend of mine ask me, it's like, do you hand wash your mask? It's like, yeah, I hand wash my mask when I hand wash it. I have some dish detergent that's antibacterial, and then I wring it out and then I hang it up and dry it.
Mm-hmm.
because I
As
only
long
go
as you're
out.
using hot water, honestly, there have been. I'm in groups that make masks and things, and there's been a lot of discussion about this. And I know people in the healthcare industry, and COVID-19 dies at 57 degrees Celsius, which is not even boiling. So
I don't think
57 Celsius is. I'm going to look it up because I
that
should
would.
have done that.
Yeah, that would be good because
134 degree 0.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
which
So
is
that's not
my
that hot.
no my shower. If it's just the hot water, is 140. So
Exactly. So it's
so
not that hot. As long as you're washing in hot water and soap. Like soap is more important. Not bleach,
right,
not other additives, not, and actually soap with the fewest ingredients possible
right,
is best to avoid, things like skin irritation and things that it can grab onto and grow. But the fat cutting thing is a big deal because COVID, part of the reason it's so hard to get rid of, and hand washing is better than hand sanitizer, isn't just for the length, but hand sanitizer doesn't break through the fatty layer that COVID
right.
has to kill the virus. And just washing with hot water and soap is the best thing you can do. But people are so worried and bleaching and boiling and like,
And injecting themselves with bleach
oh
but
yeah, you don't
that
need
is
to do any of
that
those
that
things.
is our stick for later because I'm still mad about that. I'm still so let's go worst case scenario because now states are starting to reopen and now we have killer murder hornets that have descended on the United States as well. So God is trying to tell us to stay indoors. Look, I am a theologian and I am more of the Catholic interpretation of Revelations versus the Protestant and especially the evangelical belief of Revelations, that it was about Rome and it was about Nero, but we can take lessons from it, and it's important. It's an important part of the Bible, but it is more historical than it is prophetic. However, that being said, this 2020 is making me start to question some of that.
Yeah.
Because what was okay? So we almost had a war in January. February we had Australia on fire and Brazil on fire. Then March and April we had the COVID thing, and now we have killer hornets. I'm starting to see a pattern in this, so I don't know what June's going to bring, but I don't want to either. I just like, yeah.
Well, it's funny that was it the CIA just released, or the Pentagon just released photos of UFOs,
Yeah, that was
and
earlier.
like nobody even noticed. It was like, see, told you it was gonna be aliens.
Like Stephen King was on Colbert, and he and people will come up to him and it's like, I've read The Stand, and he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't think this would actually happen. Like, I'm sorry. So I'm like, thanks,
Actually, he
Stephen.
wrote a really great thing. There was a funny exchange where he was like, "This isn't at all like The Stand. This is like actually preventable, and you can stop it." And somebody's like, "Oh my god, dude, do you know what you're talking about? You've even read the book?" It's like, this sums up the internet pretty well. Wow.
Yeah. No, he hasn't read it multiple times. He just wrote it twice. Yeah, so yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, and here's some other news. I know that Munich, I think it's Munich. I know Germany has the place that holds it canceled Oktoberfest this year. That's in September.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a lot of that going on. I saw some concerts yesterday. My friends and had tickets for being just. They got a letter, an email that was postponed, and they thought, oh, it looks like it's just in a few days. No, next year. They're just skipping to next year.
It's like Alanis Morissette was supposed to go on tour this year for the 20th anniversary of Jagged, the 25th anniversary of Jagged Little Pill this year, and I don't think that's going to happen. So she may have to postpone until next year and be the 26th anniversary. And I really wanted to go see that, and I guess I'm not going to see that this year because here's my. I hope that these reopenings work out and are smooth and everything. I don't think so. I think we're doing this way too soon. I think we need another month of this. I honestly do.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially because people aren't obeying the orders as intended, and they are not. They're not being enforced from what I've been seeing. Like I said, like Friday, you're allowed to gather outside here, and as long as it's less than 10 people or whatever. Like, I have been driving downtown to pick up food at a drive-thru and seen people just. I sent Rob a picture the other day. It was stunning because at downtown Statesville we have all these cute. Tables, and you can sit around, and people are just sitting around eating, drinking, groups of 4 or 5, nobody in masks, couple feet apart, like just as far as the
Well, there's a lot of churches that are still inside churching.
Oh yeah, oh my god, I was mad. I went last Sunday to the store, and there are 2 churches on my way over to the thruway, and both of them were just packed. Packed. And I told my husband, he's like, is it drive-in services? No, because they were, the cars were empty. And one of them had on their marquee Facebook Live and the time, like, because they were also live streaming, and I was just like, how irresponsible, rotten, like, are you just showing on your live stream all the people that did go to church? Are you trying to draw them in? Like, this is irresponsible and dangerous and stupid. And I got in quite an argument on the internet, which, I mean, I know I shouldn't, but sometimes can't help it. But there were all these people going on in the governor's press conference chat about their right to worship, and it's just part of Christianity. You don't understand. Because if you're not a Christian, that's just an integral part of our worship. And I just started quoting Bible quotes at him. Was it Matthew 16:16 or 6:6? With the, you're supposed to pray in private and do not make a big show of it.
Yeah.
And I just, really? Because, it says this. And it's actually gospel. I mean, I'm not even pulling out weird Old Testament shit like you people do. So that was fun. Not you. Obviously not you. I mean, the whole point of you wanting the show is people taking that shit out of context and using it wrong, right?
Right. There was
But anybody who's trying to claim that, like, part of Christian worship in particular is part of the doctrine is that you're supposed to gather. That's what this woman was saying, over and over. Well, until I slapped her with the Bible, and then she shut up.
Well, and here's the thing. If they're going to say that, then they're also supposed to sacrifice young lambs. I don't see them doing that anymore, so I'm like...
Well, no, but it does not say in the Bible that you're supposed to gather.
No, you're not. Now, Jesus had gatherings. Yes, he did. Don't get me wrong. He did. But that doesn't mean you have to. Okay? There's a lot of people that worship on their own in private way. That's how I worship. That's I worship on my own in private. I do look up.
But you're not, like, your freedom of religion is not being oppressed by asking to, like, stay home and not infect people.
No, it's not. But I also,
But that's what they're claiming. They're in this paranoid, the government is just trying to control us and they're taking away our freedom of religion and choice and guns. Like, they keep claiming all this, like it's this paranoid conspiracy that it's just the government doing some kind of test case for locking us down and controlling us. And ho ho ho. Oh ho ho. I just can't.
I'm just.
And the irony that it's the same sort of people that support this administration is not lost on me as either.
Yeah, I'm just.
Like, really? Which one is it?
It's like, it's a liberal conspiracy, but the liberals are in charge. You have the. Anyways, so
I understand the fear of the danger to our economy, and it is real. But there are things about our economy that need to be shifted and changed, and it is making us aware of those. And some of those changes are being made and maybe can last. And I understand it is hitting people with less privilege even harder, but it can also help us find solutions to that, and that those people are more physically in danger from this virus and have less access to treatment. I don't see that opening up is shows much foresight. I don't think we're ready yet, and we've got enough test cases now. What was it? Texas reopened, and then they're getting 1,000 new cases a day.
Yeah.
Hello.
I had read somewhere that Nancy Pelosi had floated the idea of universal basic income as a permanent fix. Not as a temporary thing, but as a permanent fix.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, and as someone who believes in that, I think that, between that and universal health care and universal college, I think that's not a bad way to go in life. I think that this is, in a lot of respect, showing a lot of cracks in our laissez-faire capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is, it's not going to happen instantaneously, but it's not going to be as a slow of a change as people think it's going to be. Because when we go back to this and everything else, and people realize, you know what, I'm busting my ass basically just to make ends meet again. And if a new tragedy, if we get locked down or something else happens, if COVID goes and does something and mutates, because viruses mutate and becomes even more deadly, and we're locked down again, I'm in the same fix or worse again. This needs to change, and I think it's going to happen fairly soon.
Well, we'll see. I mean, with everything opening back up, unless it gets much worse, those changes won't have time to take hold.
No, those changes, but I think here's my ultimate theory is, when people start working again and then kind of settle back into the routine and the haze of being stuck in their homes and all of this stuff kind of washes away, and they can sit down and process this. Because right now we're still dealing with trauma. We haven't had a chance to process this, because this is traumatic. Once we're able to process this, I think this is going to do a huge awakening. It's already done it in some respects. There's been a lot more cases of strikes happening for like Amazon and stuff like that. So there's been a lot more opening up to ideas of like unionizing, not only basically a new opening up of unions and like fast food organizations and things like that. So this once we're able to process, once we're able to get over the trauma and actually process this, I think this will I have a feeling that there's going to be some hard questions that are going to have to be answered.
I think you're being wildly optimistic. I think the American public has a short memory. I think they want back to business as usual very, very badly. The grand majority of them. Certainly I don't know that the people in power will be motivated to do anything unless the populace does make a general movement toward wanting those things. And the relief and the 24-hour news cycle, such as it is, will just shove how great it is to be back to our normal, that changing what our normal is could get buried very easily. And I hope not. I think this could be a great opportunity for change, but I don't know if it's been traumatic enough for the general voting public that's still, I don't know, laughing at me for wearing a mask and trying to say it's fake, and thinks it's okay to storm your Capitol with AR-15s to protect your rights, is going to be ready to make those kind of changes and let workers and lower class citizens like themselves solidify the middle class again with things like unionization and healthcare access.
Well, I hope that those individuals are a small minority, and can be led by the nose. And those terrorists, and I'm sorry, that's how I feel about them. They're terrorists that stormed the Capitol with their guns. That they're a small minority, and they'll be shouted down by people who see betterment and can see us being a better nation by taking examples from other countries and showing, hey, look, these people did this. They got rid of this disease, or they were able to curb it and get back onto their normal lives without having so much death and so many people getting sick, and being able to test people at a proper rate and nobody having to pay for this.
Like I said, I think you're terribly optimistic. I hope for all the same things.
I know. And I try to be a pessimist, but there's a part of me that really hopes.
You want it so bad, I know you do.
I do. I do. That, or I'm going to have to end up moving to Germany. And that's okay, too, because I do like beer and I do like pork. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Our opening up, you're right. I completely agree. It's too soon. Like, our new plan is a lot of, well, you should stay home, but you don't have to. And and you should wear a mask, but you don't have to. And we were assured that certain data goals needed to be in place for the phase 1 to begin on Friday. But we haven't really met those goals, and he announced that we're doing it anyway.
I think he got pressured because except for Virginia, every state that is around us is already reopened.
Yeah.
And
so there's room in the hospital is like the data point they're using, even though there's no hospital gowns. None. That's fucked up.
Well.
And we're ramping up testing. We've tested a whole 1.2% of the population. Oh. And those states that would pick up around us should be data being used to add to these measures, that if you're going to open retail establishments, which is part of it, but they can only do 50% capacity because it's easier for them, they're justifying this, it's easier for you to stay 6 feet from someone, but they're not requiring you to wear masks. They could at least do that in the phase.
Right, because they're not allowing restaurants to open up, so because it's hard to open up a restaurant and wear a mask. But yeah, no, I agree.
No, but they're opening retail establishments.
Right, and so they should be able.
They should say you have to wear a mask.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not even doing that, and we have people from all the states around us can just wander in and bring all their
cooties.
So many cooties. 13 feet. 13 feet. They have found that this can travel and stay alive in the air for 13 feet. We've known this for weeks. And we all think 6 feet is okay? With no mask or anything? Alright, sorry. I just...
So basically, when we close back down at the beginning, at the middle of June, because we're suddenly at 1 million deaths in the United States.
I don't want cases to spike. But
I don't either. But we're doing this completely irresponsibly.
Mm-hmm.
And here's my thing. Is if I don't know if we could re-lock down. I don't know if the nation would allow it to be re-locked down. That's my fear.
I don't know. I think if the outbreak uptakes severely enough, the more people that know someone who got really sick. I mean, we're trying to avoid the hospitals getting overwhelmed and everything else, but the lessons we want to learn about access to healthcare and the state of our infrastructure and people being personally invested isn't going to change unless it does get really bad. That's like, look at the last few wars we had. Nothing got rationed, so people weren't invested. They don't care. There's no draft.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't care.
And it's
just
normally
keep sending the poor people to war.
The poor people or contractors. Yeah. So yeah, I completely agree.
But for the things we want to get better, this shit has to be worse. That's sad. People need to be just smarter.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. People like me and you, people like us that are sensible, rational, thinking with our heads, not in conspiracy theories, not demanding to get our haircuts because we may our husbands or wives may find out what our natural hair color is or whatever the case may be. I'm here
live on the internet with all the roots, man. I'm good.
I was like, I really need a haircut. I've got 5 different colored hair going on at the same time here, but I'm not gonna. And I told her it's like about 2 weeks. You probably get to go. It's like, you know what? I can wait. It's like, thank you for being wise.
Yeah.
But I
was accused on the internet of not caring about people's jobs and not caring about my stylists and stuff. And I'm like, I'm on my phone while I'm chatting with you, like, with my stylist and making her masks for when she can reopen and bartering for my hair being done and arranging live streams to support local, service workers. You don't know me. What are you doing? You just want other people to go back to work. And you're worried about your own damn hair. I canceled my trip to go see my daughter that I have for adoption 34 years ago that I just finally got to... She found me in September. I met her in person once in December, and I was supposed to go to her hand fasting in May, and I canceled it. And I don't know when I'm going to get to see her again. I am making all the sacrifices I feel like I need to for everyone's safety. And I am accused of being, just crazy and believing that this virus exists and letting my rights being taken away.
I had a planned trip to go to Salem in October, and I'll be honest, I will probably be putting that on the shelf until next year. I don't know for sure. I don't know how this is going to play out.
Yeah, see how it goes.
I'm really worried about the winter and what happens this winter. Because it is a virus, and viruses do snap back in colder months, and I'm really worried. And I'm really worried about it then. but
There's a lot
besides
of things we don't know about how this virus behaves.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting discussion I had this week with some people insisting that we need to let herd immunity step in by reopening. And I'm like, okay, we don't know if you get immune from getting this yet, right? Like, you need to do a little more research. We don't know the reinfection rate yet. We know it has antibodies. We don't know how long they last. There's a lot of data we need to collect before that's even a semi-valid argument, and people still comparing it to the flu, which is heinously inaccurate in this instance. I'm sorry. I understand that. I understand glomming onto that at the beginning because of the relationship the viruses have vaguely to each other. But there are so many differences, and more are coming to light every time about the way this thing behaves, about its contagion level, about its death rate, and it's not, herd immunity, and it's not something, it's just going to come around every year like the flu, and you can't be immune to all of it, so let's just go so that we gain it. We don't know those things yet. The immune system is huge. I want to say I'm immunocompromised, but it's like backwards. I have autoimmune disease, and it's hyperactive, and that makes me more susceptible in different ways. But I know from having to see epidemiologists and endocrinologists and rheumatologists and all the specialists I have to see, because there is immunology is a science, but it's not a doctor you can go to, that I've had my doctor say, there are things we just don't know yet about the immune system. It's just too big, and the way it works is there are still mysteries in it. And so for people, everybody's a damn expert. If you're gonna start yelling about herd immunity, you may as well be an anti-vaxxer, and I'm not listening anymore. I will try to send you some information that I have and that I have researched, but I'm only trying once or twice, and I have to walk away.
No, I get you, and I understand. I like I said, the only thing is there was a report that there was someone was on CNN, and he's a virologist or something like that, and he was talking about how he felt that this winter was going to be pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only thing. I just use the flu as an example.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just
No, I understand. So let's say if we had to go back into lockdown in June. All right, let's go worst case scenario, because I own a book called Worst Case Scenario. I do. It was a book that came out. It's like, what happens, say if your car, if the brakes go out on your car, how do you get out of your car alive? Things like that.
Sure.
A lot of it is you'll probably break your legs, but you'll live.
Mm-hmm.
So, but let's go worst case scenario, and let's say that we're back in lockdown in June or July, and we are stuck, and it may not end until after the election. What happens then? How do we handle the election?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff flying around about this right now. That's another thing people are using to feed this. It's a Democrat conspiracy. Because the Democratic Party has been making moves to do things like try to go virtual with their convention, ballot by mail initiatives, and gathering all the data we need to switch to ballot by mail if that sort of thing does happen. And there's a lot of strange information out there. There's a lot of things that are not in the Constitution that you would expect to be there to account for this. And there are a lot of inconsistencies in our government because we're so states' rights, and afraid of the federal government being too overpowered, that we haven't standardized some things that maybe should be, like voting rights and accessibility. So, what happens? Well, if we try to solve these problems, obviously, and some people are trying to. Actually, I'm interested to tell a story. I'm going to try to quickly cover what happened locally with the Democratic Party, for instance.
Okay.
It came time to be electing our delegates to the convention. Like, these are the people that go and they represent the populace that voted for a certain candidate, and they go to the DNC and they cast their votes, our votes. So the plan of organization is basically the Democratic Party's version of, like, it's their constitution, right? They have a plan of organization. It's got all the rules, like when your precinct meeting has to be held between this state and this state, how many people have to be there, who you elect to be in certain positions, the state executive committee, it has to be held at a certain location during a certain time of year. You elect this many people in these positions, all that kind of wherefore, thereas, bit by bit. So the state executive committee meeting was supposed to happen, and we're supposed to be electing these delegates to go, and there was no contingency. It had to be held in person. It even specifies in person. At a certain date, and there had to be a certain number of people attending to have a quorum to make these elections. And the executive committee had to meet, and they were trying to. There wasn't even anything in the plan of organization stating that the chair could, in an emergency, change any of these rules. It would have to be passed by the whole organization at a meeting. So there was this catch-22 of, we are legally not allowed to meet. And it's stunning, being a state that we have hurricanes in, that this has not been run in before. There is basically no emergency contingency plan for not being able to have hundreds of people to meet in person. And they had to skirt the rules. And there are people up in arms about it, losing their damn minds, because you can't do this virtually. Just because the letter of, the law, so to speak, in the rules, doesn't account for it, because it's outdated. I mean, I can't see any real reason you couldn't do this in, Skype, Zoom, however you have to take a roll call that shows that people are in attendance, why they would have to be physically present. It's just outdated. Right. Now, this is the kind of thing we ran into in Wisconsin, was it? Where they forced them to go to the polls because they had in-person voting. They forced it. Right. It went to court, and they were made to go in person, and then people got sick. Vote by mail is something that is not standardized state by state. It's wildly different in every state, just like absentee ballots are wildly different. There are a handful of states that have all vote by mail, I think, right now. But I think there's like absentee, all mail, and ways of voting from home, but there's not really any online voting, and there's a lot of arguments for and against that. I don't think we're ready for that. But all mail voting is great. I think it might be the closest we can get. However, getting that law, those laws passed in every state would be very, very difficult. I've seen the absentee ballot laws change every election in North Carolina, just for how you have to have it witnessed, what address it can be mailed to, how many people have to witness it. And that's just the absentee. Actually, more absentee fraud goes on than in-person voter fraud. The people are always scaring you about having voter ID. That's not where the fraud even takes place. It's usually an absentee. So all mail, you'd get more voters but it can be harder to verify.
Right.
So it's a lot of problems we would have to solve to be able to have an election if this all goes to hell again and people can't go vote. So, what happens if we don't have an election? Well, the presidential line of succession is quite an interesting thing. Like, I was joking with Barney, everyone. I was like, "Hey, you might get Warren," because the order is vice president after the president, and the president's term ends on is it January? I forget the date, but it specifically in the Constitution on a certain day. Bam, no longer president. These terms do specifically end on a certain date, and then the successor would go to vice president, and he wouldn't be vice president anymore because his term also expires. Then it goes to Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Well, Nancy Pelosi is also up for re-election in 2020, so then it would go to President Pro Tem of the Senate, who is this old dude from Iowa, and that would be dependent upon if the Senate went ahead and indeed elected him President Pro Tem of the Senate again for another term. However,
I apologize. It's Chuck Grassley.
Right, and the issue there is with the number of seats that are up for election in the Senate, the Democrats are defending a whole lot more seats than the Republicans right now. So if these elections just don't happen, the Democrats suddenly have a majority. So the President Pro Tem of the Senate would be whoever the Democrats, like the next person in line of succession, if there is no election for the 2020 for these seats, would be whoever the Democrats left, because they would then have majority, choose as President Pro Tem.
And it could be Warren. It could be Bernie. It wouldn't be Biden because he's not as. You have to be a member of the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
So it would. So basically, the House would not be seated. There would not be a House because the entire House is voted every 2 years. So it would basically be at that point, it would be the Senate, and then the Senate Pro Tem would be at that point elected as would be president elect, and that could cause
acting president.
Yeah. Well, acting president, correct. So the other situation is at that point is that what. So in most states, they would allow the governor of that state would be allowed to pick a senator for a replacement. However, funny enough, let's take a state, let's say Kentucky. All right. So the Kentucky governor is not up for re-election this year. Okay. So he could technically, if they do allow for the governors who are still in office, because like our governor in North Carolina is up for re-election this year, so that would also, state elections would also be up in the air. So, but the governors in states that their governors would still be in power at that point would not be would be able to appoint. The Kentucky governor is a Democrat, so we all know that he's not going to pick Mitch McConnell at that point. I mean,
yeah.
So, and also, I think, and there's several states that are in that camp that the governor is, that the Republican senator is now having a Democratic.
Okay, so the thing is, Congress could pass a law, and that's, I think, what would probably happen, because we will know before January 20th, right? And that's the date the president and the vice president, their office just ends. So it does say in the 20th Amendment that if neither a president nor vice president have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of the term of their successor, then Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a president-elect nor a vice president-elect shall have qualified, declaring who shall act as president, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected. And such person shall act accordingly until a president or vice president shall have qualified. So, the current Congress, before their term ended, and a lot of them would be able to stay on because there are contingencies in different state laws where terms can be extended of Congress people.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so there is some portion of Congress that could be preserved, and certainly they would, I would think, act before that January 20th date if this election was not going to happen. But it would basically allow Congress to pick an acting president.
Problem is, then we have a split house. We have a split House and Senate, so that would be interesting. And if California is one of those states, then that would mean that Pelosi then would still be Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
And so they really wouldn't have to, per se. So that
No, I don't think she gets to stay, though. I don't know. It's very... There's so much. There's way too much of this that is up in the air and needs to be tidied up. There's a lot of this that is just has never been accounted for. Nobody ever thought there would not be a way to have an election, and there's not really an excuse for it. We should be able to convert to by mail, but it is complicated, and we need to start now.
Yeah.
To get it done. It's more complicated than people realize. It seems like just mail everyone a ballot. If you've ever worked in an elections office or had training to be a judge in your precinct, even, and it's certainly if you've been involved in state politics and followed the path that your Board of Elections has to all the time, it's not that easy, and people will fight whatever ignorant fight they have. Every step of the way. And a lot of times, unfortunately, I didn't want to believe it, but I spent enough time in politics to see that it is indeed true that there are people who just want fewer people to vote.
Mm.
They want specific people to vote. That's one good thing with the Republicans in power, actually. I think the possibility of moving to a more like an absentee system they would be on board with. Their demographic tends to take more advantage of. As a matter of fact, if you look into voter fraud and find all the cases that actually exist and how many are absentee, you will also find when there is a lawsuit and people get caught, it's almost always a right-wing operative that was pulling that shit. We had a case recently here in North Carolina, didn't we?
The ninth district?
Yep. And that is historically a thing. However, because of the state of the world right now, pushing for all by mail is, I think, going to have a new generation of people pushing for different kinds of electronic access and addressing. So I just got to hope that the red tape creators get the hell out of the way if we have to do this.
Well, the other thing is that then that's going to delay results because it has to be postmarked on the election day. So, but that means that let's say people wait until election day and all mail it out on that day. As long as it's postmarked on that, that's perfectly fine. But that means that it could take another 2 weeks. I'm okay with that. It means that I don't have to sit up until 3 a.m. waiting for results to come in. So that's a plus on my part. But on the same thing, it's one of those situations where I know that there's a lot of big businesses that rely a lot of corporate investment in those kind of result things.
Oh, shoot. January 3rd, by the way. I was wrong. The term of all members of the House would end January 3rd. So even before the presidential term.
Right. Right. But they can always do it in the lame duck after the supposed election season.
Right. Between November and January.
Yeah. They can also delay the election. I don't know how that would work. That is a possibility.
They would have to. That would take a constitutional amendment, though.
Oh, it does? Oh, well, never mind
then. Yeah. That's not so easy to do. Seriously. Oh.
Now, let me ask this question. Well, let's say all the stars align. Mitch McConnell somehow feels magnanimous and decides to allow this to go through because he's not wanting it right now. But let's say it goes through and it comes through. Do you think that this would increase younger voters?
That's hard to say. Young voters are so disillusioned and they don't freaking show up to begin with. If we change the very form of elections, and under the threat of we can't do it all unless we do it this way, I don't know. If my experience with even getting my son to fill out his absentee ballot isn't very good.
Well, great.
Yeah.
I was
the kid who rode his bike for miles to work for Obama. So,
I mean, here's the thing, look, maybe it's me, and maybe I'm a rare nut in the world, but I remember I think it was a Walmart. It was Walmart, and they were signing people up for elections.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yes, I turned 18 in September, which means I couldn't vote for the primary that year, but I could vote for the election. I signed up. I went and voted my first election in 1992. Okay, that A tells you how old I am, but B also says, who I voted for at the time. And I've not missed an election.
Shut up. My first vote was for Dukakis, so...
Well, at least I had someone... Wow. That shows dedication. That's because...
Reagan? Really? I mean...
well, no, it was Bush. You were voting against Bush.
Yeah, well...
I mean, my parents
having just lived through Reagan and having been put to work underage as a solution to not wanting to extend my mother's unemployment during the recession. Yeah. Didn't believe that was a very good solution.
My parents had to vote for, who was it that ran against Reagan the first time? Oh, it was Carter, but had to voted for Mondale. And they were like,
you were saying about election results being delayed if we go to all paper, and that is not necessarily a big deal at all. I don't think it needs to be a problem. Scantron stuff is quick, accurate, tested. Yeah, like you said, there's unfortunately a lot of money tied up with these private corporations, and that's another thing where I think some laws need to be changed because they will not open source and let their code be audited.
Right.
And that's something people are so afraid of the government. Well, yeah, but guess what? If you can get a government agency that can oversee that, or you can let a public, make them hire some nonpartisan group to look at the code, you can be sure it's secure and not tampered with. That's the same with electronic voting machines. Have way more security problems than a paper ballot, and just running it through the scanner and having a count. Those are a lot easier to check.
Well, and that's why North Carolina had a touch screen, I think, 1 year, and then
they still have them some places here.
Okay.
That's
But
county by county.
Right. I know my county does paper ballots. And I think most of the counties do paper ballots. And
Yeah,
I
mine
think that,
too. They had a actually I remember being spending a lot of time at the board elections when that happened, but there was a big law passed when there was actually government funding given to all the election boards to go ahead and buy machines.
right.
Or upgrade the ones they had, and Iredell bought like 2 of them. They used them for a primary, and then they said nope, and went
Yeah.
back to the old ones for a million different reasons. Not the least of which, if you're talking about delays in counting, most of the touchscreen ones, for instance, have their okay. When you take your ballot and you put it through the Scantron and then it counts if there's something wrong with the way it's marked, it kicks it into a separate bin and then a person has to look at it and determine your intent. Done. If something goes wonky with software, if it starts running out of ink, if any of the results are questioned on a touchscreen, you can't just go back and get the ballots and count them again. It's like a cash register receipt. It's like miles of receipt paper. So imagine doing a recount with that.
Yeah,
That's
no.
physically impossible and way more a problem than if we did a vote by mail and just use Scantrons for the initial count like we do, like SATs, like your ACTs, like all those standardized tests you take. We have a lot of these machines around. We know they work. They've been around for a really long time, and recounts are easy with that sort of ballot compared to some kind of electronic receipt.
Or punch ballots.
Yeah, well.
I'm sorry. I just had a flashback. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not in Florida. It's not
where
Florida.
It's something mechanical that can fail. Like, we don't want that either. But that's, with vote by mail, not really so much an issue.
Yeah. But
I think it's going to, young people, I think they want an app. And trusting anyone to the security of that in this day and age is going to be nigh impossible.
I don't trust Google to get me to places I need to go sometimes. I'm not trusting them with my electoral voting.
There are technologies in place that can handle this sort of thing. HIPAA compliant. I would go with, I would switch the CDC's track away from all the distractions they've had for years and years and put them on this, because if nothing else, they have to have some serious HIPAA, and that is the most secure encryption and encoding and transference of data that I have ever seen in practice. And even having worked in elections, my husband works for a healthcare company, and I see the hoops, they go through. And I would treat, if we could do electronic voting using the internet, I would treat it in closed systems the way they do with HIPAA-sensitive information. But I think that's what it would take for young people.
But that infrastructure, it would take a couple of years for that to be built at that kind of level, don't you think?
Depends on the crack teams you had. It shouldn't have to, but again, this state-by-state battle that we would have to even get it started is what would take years and years. Because
so I apologize.
They won't let people are too afraid to let the government, the federal government, standardize anything.
So what would it take? What would it take for the federal government to standardize voting? Would it take an amendment to the Constitution?
Yes.
Oh, that's not going to happen.
If they let it go and they fight so long that they end up with not having an election, and the Democrats that are left in the Senate just get to pick somebody, might be able to get it done real quick. It'd be like Jeff Jackson's snow day all of a sudden. Those of you that don't get the reference, Google it. Jeff Jackson, North Carolina, snow day. Because that was epic. And if we end up with like just some senates and the Democrat and a majority of Democrats sitting in the Senate going, well, let's pick a president and do stuff.
And we're going to pick, you know what? We're feeling extra. We're feeling extra today. We're going to pick Elizabeth. We're going to pick Bernie Sanders, and Bernie's going to look at Elizabeth Warren and it's like, you're going to be my vice president.
Here we go. We're getting health care. We're getting universal income. No student debt. Yours is gone, and yours is gone, and yours is gone. They're going to bring Oprah just to deliver the address.
And you get free college, and you get free college. Everybody gets free college. And you get free health care, and you get free because
and you can work from home, and you can work from home. You can't walk, that's okay. You can work from home.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but we were going to be bitching about giving away free stuff to lazy people, and people don't realize the amount of people that are able to work in the situations now that weren't able to work before. Could be a whole other path to our future.
Yeah. Give it about 3 months of them passing all the laws that they can pass and signing all the stuff they want to pass. Yeah. We may have.
Although then, when we could have an election, the pendulum might go nuts. Although the numbers are out there, and if the youth got inspired enough, we could keep it.
Yeah.
They'd show up.
Well, and the thing is, there would be states that would rebel, quote unquote. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm afraid that they may start another civil war." It's like, these guys that you'd show up at a battlefield with them, they'd probably piss their pants. I'm sorry. These guys, they know. Here's the thing. I saw pictures of these guys that stormed Michigan. Okay. And if they had any pigment to their skin, they wouldn't have made it down the street. First off, the way they were dressed and everything, that's the first thing. The second thing is that these guys were terrorists. And thirdly, and more importantly, these guys knew their privilege and knew that nothing was going to happen to them as long as they didn't touch an officer.
Yeah. That was very sad.
So that's the situation. Well, we've talked longer than normal.
Yeah. And I'll make sure to put some links in. There's some good articles in our notes. There's a really good article from The Hill about what exactly happens or could happen, and stuff from the National Conference of State Legislators about how absentee and vote by mail works in different states. And of course, I'll post the wiki about the line of secession, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So you posted the carrot. I hadn't had a chance to look at it because we just posted it right before the show.
Okay. I'm surprised you haven't seen this, though. This has been all over Facebook. This is super wonderful. Or do we want to do stick first? Because you know what? As much as the term is carrot and stick, we end up ending on such a downer, and we've been already ranting. I think I might want to switch it and end on the happy.
All right, we'll do that. That works because then that way I'm not talking twice. So I posted this stick because look, I've been doing my best during this crisis not to point fingers yet, but that's so coming. there will be divine retribution. I feel it. And September may not want to be a part of that show, and I understand she doesn't like the negativity so much, but she may want to get some stuff off of her chest too. So we'll see. But this whole thing where he sat there and he asked one of his doctors, "Hey, what would happen if we like pumped bleach into somebody's lungs or pumped UV light into somebody and would that work on them?" And then there was an uptick. There was an uptick and people calling the poison control because they listened to the president and actually drank bleach or inhaled Lysol. And look, our president, with his negligence, has already killed almost 100,000 people already. Made over a million people sick. Okay. We have lost more people than the Vietnam War in 3 months. And the Vietnam War lasted for years. And then he decides that he's going to say something incredibly stupid. And if you watch the video and watch the doctor's face, you can see a soul die as she is listening to this man ask her these questions about bleach. Donald Trump, you're not a president, you're not a leader, and you get the stick today. All right, the carrot. Let's get on some good news.
You give him the stick so much.
I have not given him the stick that much.
Needs more sticks.
Hey, come on.
Okay, so I know you're gonna love this story because I know you have particular, love for our post office and have been pushing people to support them during all this. So there's this little girl, she's like 11 years old, and she has all these pen pals. She writes 5-10 letters a week all the time. Is it every week? Sorry. 5 to 10 letters a week to her pen pals and stuff. And one day she decided to drop a little extra note to her mailman. And she decorates the envelopes with all kinds of stuff and puts stickers on them. And so she wrote this letter to her mailman. She said, "I'm Emerson, and you may know me as the person that lives here that writes a lot of letters and decorates the envelopes. Well, I want to thank you for taking my letters and delivering them. You're very important to me. I make people happy with my letters, but you do too. The reason you are very important in my life is because I don't have a phone, so how else am I supposed to stay in touch with my friends? You make it possible." She wrote in the letter, which was shared on Twitter by her dad, founder of The Great Discontent, and they're a platform for creative professionals and content curators. So, what happened was the next day she got a letter back from, 2 letters. She got a package, 2 notes and stamps in it. And one was from her mailman and one was from a supervisor. And they just wanted to, say how touched they were by her message. But then they wrote to her parents and asked if they could share it in their internal newsletter with the, USPS. Mm-hmm. So then it gets interesting. They asked for permission to use it. They did. And all these people from all over the Western United States wanted to thank her. And they were like, all right, we want to let you know we want to make sure you know because you're a parent, so you can screen the letters, and we're making sure this is handled appropriately. But there are a lot of people that want to thank her and write to her. The Postal Service was like, this has sparked great joy in a time of turmoil in our country, and I thank you for raising a daughter like Emerson. May her love for her country and the United States Postal Service be continued through her years. So then her postman shows up and they meet in person, for the first time. And they got a, picture through the door because distancing, and he showed up with a whole box of letters. And It's just kind of been snowballing, and she's writing up to 25 letters a week now, trying to respond. People are sending stamps. People are saying really nice, messages saying, "Hey, I know you might not be able to write back to me, but that's okay, and you deserve to get letters too." And it's a really beautiful story. So, good. Kudos to you, Emerson Weber. You get all the carrots. If they're carrot stamps, I'm going to find them. We'll send her carrot stamps.
Yes, we should find carrot stamps and send them to her. It'd be great. That is actually...
But she always, every letter has art all over the envelopes and jokes. She writes jokes and she writes about her brother. Some people have been sending double letters so her brother could have them.
Oh, that's nice too. So I'm glad to hear that letter writing is not dead, and pen pals aren't dead either. So I'm glad to hear that. So With that said, I want to thank you for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII. You can also find the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we also do a podcast as well of the show. Just find our website. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon page, where $2 a month can keep this show going.
And I'm September. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12, and hear me on the Geek Grills podcast. Thank you for listening today, and bless your hearts. All right, stop stream.